well, we can discuss this movement. I'm joined now by Spyro Limneos in the studio and Anuo Desai, an Occupy Wall Street protester in New York, who we haven't got at the moment. And also, but I can say, we have a guest in Melbourne as well. Well, let's begin with you, Spyro. Thank you very much for joining me. We've seen all of these campaigns around the world. The movement is obviously growing, but we are also seeing less sympathy, I think, to some of the protests. What's your impression?
That's not my impression at all. We receive, on a daily basis, we receive support from so many people from all walks of life. It's not just the 200 people who are camping at St. Paul's. We have more than 1,000 people visiting the camp every day, and thousands of emails from all around the country and across the globe, because the idea that we're standing for represents so many people.
Are you campaigning for the same thing? Do you
Absolutely,
think?
yes.
Do you think that message is clear? I don't know if that message is clear.
The message is very clear. We want a democracy that is independent of private interests, and we want an economic system that is just and fair, and it doesn't represent just a handful of banks, but the interest of the public.
OK, let's get a view from Melbourne. Nick Carson is there with us. Nick, just tell us what's been going on with the camp there.
Yeah, well, we've been pushed around the city, I mean, a lot. As everyone's probably aware, on the 21st of October, we were quite violently evicted from City Square here in Melbourne. But what we're seeing in Melbourne, as with a lot of other places around the world, is we're seeing local council bylaws being used to oppress peaceful assembly and free speech. And here in Melbourne, in Australia, we're actually taking our local council, the City of Melbourne, to federal court over this particular matter.
There's been quite a lot of, obviously there are two sides to every tale, and there have been some reports from the Salvation Army, I believe, that the camp is perhaps a public nuisance. There have been reports that children, aged 13, 14, 15, have been given access to alcohol and drugs. Can you defend that?
Yeah, well, that story was just sprang up this morning, and it was completely beaten up by a lot of our mainstream media here in Melbourne. Occupy Melbourne is a drug and alcohol-free zone. It's also a peaceful protest. So none of these things have been happening in Treasury Gardens.
Why would the Salvation Army make up something like this if there was no evidence of this?
Well, they certainly haven't made it up. They, you know, they're actually going to come and visit us tomorrow to talk to us about how we can deal with some of Melbourne's homeless and people with mental illnesses or youth runaways, because these are issues that are not being dealt with, and problems that are not being dealt with by the City of Melbourne and the Victorian State Government. And it shouldn't be left to a peaceful protest to start handling some of these things. I mean, our community kitchen has always been open to everybody and has been feeding the homeless for over a month now. But really, those are issues for the City of Melbourne and the state government to really start dealing with.
Okay. And talk to me about the communication you're having. You say 900 cities around the world have taken part. What communication is there between all of the so-called Occupy camps about the message and how you want it to get through?
Our decision-making process is through the General Assemblies, which are open to everyone to attend, not just the people who are camping, but to literally everyone. So we do communicate the decisions of the General Assemblies with other occupations around the world. The channels we use are social media mainly.
And what's the message you actually want people to hear? What would you want our viewers to hear from you today?
For people to join us and to give a solution to this. To say what? To say what we've seen in this country since 2008. 2 million people losing their jobs. We've seen small businesses struggling. We've seen youth unemployment at record highs. We've seen family homes being repossessed. Now, at the same time, we see the people who are responsible for this crisis going away with massive bonuses, and the taxpayer bailing out the banks with £1.3 trillion just in this country. Now, you don't have to be an economist to understand that there's something fundamentally wrong and undemocratic with this.
OK. Nick Carson, you've heard Spyro here in the studio talk about his view. Is this the view that you have, that it is mainly anti-bankers, anti the financial system?
Well, those are just some of the issues that are affecting us in our day-to-day lives. And at the end of the day, what the Occupy movement around the world is about reclaiming our voices in our democracies. Because what we're seeing happening around the world in so many different Western democracies, not just here in Australia or in the UK, is elected representatives not listening to their constituents, and that gives rise to all kinds of problems, whether it's in the financial sector, whether it's to do with environmental policy, public health, education, whatever it might be. Our politicians have stopped listening to us, and that's not what a real democracy looks like.
Okay, Nick Carson, thank you very much for giving me your views from Melbourne. Spyro, thank you very much for your views.